There seems to be a war on cattle worldwide, with governments claiming cows' contribution to greenhouse gases makes a general switch to plant-based diets necessary. The United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization is calling on the United States to cut down on meat consumption. They claim this is to cut down on greenhouse gas emissions, but according to studies, beef cattle are responsible for just 2% of greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. and less than 0.5% in the world's emissions. The National Cattlemen's Beef Association calls these measures artificial barriers to protein consumption that will do nothing to solve the world's climate issues. Many Americans have raised questions on the government's push to regulate the food market and consumers' ability to choose their own diet. Podcaster and MMA personality Joe Rogan shared a government-funded food recommendation chart on his social media that went as far as claiming Lucky Charms were healthier than ground beef. For more on this, I brought in Dr. John Jaquish, who previously said the federal government will never admit eating meat is one of the healthiest things you can do. According to Dr. J, it's more about economics than health.
It just has to do with cost. It has to do with government being in the middle of people's budgets for food. 76% of Americans are either on welfare or on Social Security. So their regular budget is dictated by federal funding. So would any government rather spend $2 a day telling you Twinkies are good for you? Or would they rather give you $25 a day and tell you steak is great for you?
In recent years, companies have come out with alternatives to beef, like Beyond Beef and Impossible Burger. But are these alternatives healthy or even necessary?
They're not healthy. It's just sort of a Frankenstein manufactured chemical type product. It's worse for the environment from a methane perspective, which I find incredibly ironic. They don't talk about that, of course. This is not a solution. It's almost an unhealthy insult to those who are trying to eat healthy. And it's really sad for those who are misled.
It remains unclear how far the so-called fight against climate change will go. But sweeping changes and the lessening of consumer choice could put human health at risk, rather than serve the betterment of humanity.
The idea that cows are contributing to greenhouse emissions, it has to do with methane. Whether a blade of grass falls to the ground and rots, or if it is eaten by a cow, the same amount of methane is created. It's nonsensical, it's childlike, it's factually incorrect, and I think it's pretty criminal that people are being told to eat the wrong things that are actually going to make them wildly unhealthy.
So I do want to focus a little bit on you before we have to go. I want to know about your best-selling book. I want to know about your product. So weightlifting is a waste of time. Tell us a little bit about that.
I got it right here. Where is it? Right. There we go.
Perfect.
So yeah, weightlifting is a waste of time. So I wrote a book based on a lot of science, just about 250 studies that I compiled and analyzed, and looked at how many of us are really wasting our time in the gym. And it's because a lot of things having to do with standard weightlifting don't work well. And there's a method, a type of training out there called variable resistance. This means the resistance changes in accordance with your capability. So when you're like at the top of a squat and your legs are almost extended, the weight becomes very heavy. But when you're nearing the bottom of the squat, it gets much lighter. So there's lower chance of injury for the knee joint and the hip joint, and greater muscular engagement because the weight goes up as the muscle becomes more efficient in its contraction. That's really what that book's about.
Amazing. And that actually segues us perfectly into your X3 Smart Gym. I have been seeing videos about this product for a long time, actually. And so I kind of want to, it kind of goes based off of what you just said on the resistance part, but I want you to explain that product to our viewers.
So when individuals begin training, they very quickly hear about the principle of progressive overload. What that means is you really only grow when you become stronger. So it's the exposure to an ever higher amount of work through the target muscle. And really means like if you don't achieve a greater amount of work, then you're not really stimulating growth. So now this is really from a strength perspective, not necessarily a muscle size perspective, because those things are viewed a little bit differently. But ultimately, we all want to be as strong as possible. And so when looking at that, being able to track your data is super important. Now, being able to track an aggregate with variable resistance, meaning you see the total amount of work done by the target muscle, including faster reps or shorter reps, because they're counted a little differently. So we're sampling multiple times per second to capture the true amount of work that a muscle group has achieved, and it's right in front of you in real time. So you're challenged to beat your previous best every time. And because variable resistance works so well for muscle growth, people beat their number just about every time, and they continue to grow. And by comparison to most people probably only grow from the first 2 months of workouts in their life with strength training, and then they never grow again.
Oh, perfect, Dr. J. Thank you so much for speaking with me. Where can our viewers find you?
Yes, Katie, thank you. My website, drj.com, DOCTOR, the letter J.com. It's links to all my social media, YouTube. I do the most on Instagram, so if you're going to pick one to follow me, Instagram.
Perfect. Thanks again.
For all our viewers asking where One America News is heading in the future, we would like to introduce you to OAN Live. OAN Live is the best way to stay up to date on all of the hard-hitting, straight-shooting, national and international headlines. And the best part is, OAN Live is only $4.99 per month. All the credible, honest, unbiased reporting One America News offers at a fraction of the cost of cable. Just go to OANN.com to easily sign up for OAN Live and stay informed.